Welcome to the Global News Podcast. I'm Pete Ross and I'm joined by our South Asia specialist, Anbarasan Ethirajan. On this edition, we're going to be discussing the exiled former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, who's vowed to return to her home country despite facing the death penalty. Anbarasan, thanks for joining us. What exactly has she been saying?
It's the second anniversary of what happened in Bangladesh, the mass uprising that forced the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to flee the country. And she held a press conference in Delhi, talking virtually, only audio, explaining what happened during that time and also her future plans. Basically, what she says is she wants to go back to her country. Currently, she is in exile in Delhi, in India. But, despite all the accusations by various human rights groups and also a conviction by a Bangladeshi tribunal, she didn't show any remorse or regretted for the loss of lives during those protests. A Bangladeshi court convicted her for crimes against humanity for trying to suppress these student-led protests 2 years ago, and she was awarded the death sentence. And she was talking about, she was facing this threat of being jailed or even facing the death sentence. But she was not afraid to go back because this is where she had to go and work with the millions of people.
Let's go back 2 years ago to June 2024 when those student uprisings first broke out. What exactly triggered them and what happened over the coming weeks?
Sheikh Hasina, the president of the Awami League party, she was in power from 2009 until 2024 when the protests against her started. And even though there were infrastructure development and industrial growth, there were widespread allegations of suppression of dissent and human rights abuses, and also about worsening economic conditions. Actually, the students started this movement as an anti-quota movement, anti-reservation in civil service jobs. But later on, that spread to other parts of the country. People from other walks of life, like opposition parties, Islamist civil society groups, they all joined this mass uprising that went on for weeks. And hundreds of people during her reign were accused of forcibly disappeared by security forces, which at that time the government denied. The UN also said it had documented hundreds of killings even during the uprising. It talked about a figure of up to 1,400. And then because of this violent uprising, she fled to neighboring India. She always had a very good relations with India. She was seen by many people in Bangladesh as pro-India. An interim government led by Professor Mohammed Yunus took over. They were in power for about a year and a half, where during that period, they had established various committees to look into the constitutional reforms, to stabilize the economy. But there were also accusations of mismanagement and also targeting supporters of the Awami League. The activities of the Awami League were banned at that time. And then late last year, a Bangladeshi crimes tribunal found Sheikh Hasina guilty of crimes against humanity for the killings during the mass uprising and also for failing to stop all these allegations denied by Ms Hasina and her party colleagues.
Do we have any sense today, or did she give us a more insight into why she's returning? I mean, as you said, she's facing the death penalty. So why would she go back and take that risk?
She has spent about 2 years living in India. In the meantime, many of her party colleagues were facing arrests, and some, according to their own party, were killed in extrajudicial killings denied by the government. And a new government has taken over after elections in February this year. That was a Bangladesh Nationalist Party led by Tarique Rahman, the son of former Prime Minister Begum Khaleda Zia. Currently, the Awami League remains banned within Bangladesh. In fact, the government also warned various the media houses within the country not to broadcast Ms Hasina's comments because because of the court order. She was convicted by a court, and now she wants to go back. According to one of the prominent analysts like David Berkman, who lives in Bangladesh, it is basically she would lose a relevance in Bangladesh if she continues to stay in Delhi. If she wants to make any impact in Bangladeshi politics, whether she's going to go to prison or if she's going to face the death sentence, she should be returning to the country to see how her party can be revived. Of course, there is a huge risk that she may be jailed straight away. And she can appeal against this verdict. We don't know how long this appeal process will take. And also, there are within the party also, there are some murmurs because many of the low-level party cadres are suffering, according to them, because some of the Islamist groups and the police are going after them. And there is no one to organize, no one to give them any support at this point. She wants to go back and then to see whether the party mechanism can be revived or political fortunes can be revived. And that was one of the reasons why many people say that she's going to go back to Bangladesh.
And what's the reaction likely to be if she does return? Does she have a lot of support there still?
There are concerns that if once she returns, that can galvanize as her supporters. And that could also lead to political instability because there are other groups which are really angry with her. For example, the student party and the student leaders, they still want answers. There were hundreds of people who were killed during that uprising. So they want answer, they want closure, they want to see Ms Hasina to be punished. And at the same time, several Islamist parties, they also took part in these protests, and they said many of their supporters were killed. So there was a widespread anger within Bangladesh at that time. So if she's going to come back, there are going to be protests in the capital, Dhaka, by those who are strongly opposed to her. And at the same time, there is a possibility that some of her supporters may also galvanize, may also come around to hold protests. So there is a real concern that there could be a political unrest as well as political instability.
Let's talk now about the current government in Bangladesh. So there are elections back in February. So it's been about 6 months since they've been in power. How are they doing?
For the first few months, the government led by Mr. Tarique Rahman, the main job was to bring stability within the country because there was an interim government, there were lots of differences and criticism about the way the government interim administration functioned. So the main job was to bring stability. And the second one was to bring everyone together. So they wanted to have reconciliation with the various groups, but they also faced economic problems. Within a month of coming to power, and the war in the Gulf started, that was impacting the fuel prices. Bangladesh heavily depends on imported fuel. So that led to rise in fuel prices. And, there were rumors of shortage that led to long queues outside petrol stations. And also, the UNICEF in Bangladesh was saying how during the interim administration, not enough measures were taken to procure vaccines for measles in Bangladesh. Now, hundreds of kids have died. Children have died because of this measles. So the government was firefighting again on another front. But they were also trying to promote exports, trying to project a business-friendly image, trying to reach out to various countries in the region and the globe and want to show that it is a business-friendly country and asking for countries and companies to come and invest in the country.
Sheikh Hasina has been in exile for these last 2 years in India. How has that affected ties with Bangladesh and Bangladesh's ties with other partners in the region?
In South Asia, if you look at any of these countries like in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, or Nepal, you always have the regional powers competing for influence. And Bangladesh is not an exception. For a long time, India was quite dominant in its influence in Bangladesh, mainly because of Sheikh Hasina, who had forged a very close ties with Indian leadership. Now, after her ouster, the interim government again started forging a close ties with Pakistan, India's rival. And what we saw was a very close, fast emerging military-to-military cooperation. There have been visits by Pakistani ministers after more than a decade. So on one hand, it was developing close ties with Pakistan. At the same time, it was also looking up to China for technology, for investment. And usually what happens in South Asia is any leader gets elected, their first port of call after the election would be to India because India is a regional power and they have a bilateral economic ties. But this time, Mr. Rahman, he first went to Malaysia on the way to China. So where he signed quite a few agreements, especially MOUs, on having a business zone, a commercial zone, and also asking for more Chinese technology and investment. And so far, he has not visited India. So that sends out a very clear signal to India that as long as Sheikh Hasina is in Delhi, it will be very difficult for any Bangladeshi government to make sure that the bilateral relations are back on track or back to normal. So that's going to be a very difficult situation for any Bangladeshi government to go and tell their people, even though Sheikh Hasina is in Delhi, I'm going to go and meet the Indian leadership. That's one of the sticking points for the India-Bangladesh relations, though they have grown in the past 6 months, but still some of these issues are preventing them to have what they used to have before.
Our South Asia specialist, Anbarasan Ethirajan. And if you'd like to hear more from the Global News Podcast, click the link below. Thanks for watching.